Hi, I'm Feroz Khan, and welcome to Drag and Drop Low Code Unplugged, the podcast where we explore the game changing impact of low code in software development. Join me in insightful conversations with IT leaders and passionate low code enthusiasts who are at the forefront of this digital evolution. Together, we'll explore how early adoption of low code is giving businesses a competitive edge on a global scale. We'll discuss its impact on software development, dissect its role in transforming businesses, and uncover the ways in which it's reshaping career trajectories. So whether you're a seasoned IT professional or a curious enthusiast, be sure to tune in as we share success stories and unravel the mysteries of low code. Subscribe now and stay tuned for a front row seat to the revolution that's shaping the future of technology. So let's go. Hi Andy, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Good. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. I followed you for a while, and we've had the pleasure of meeting as well. So I thought it was about time to finally get you on. I think you're quite vocal on LinkedIn, and you're sharing your kind of blogs and things about with your experience. So I thought it'd be good to change the written format to kind of hear you speak. So I appreciate you taking the time.
No problem. I've been watching for a while, and it's been interesting. There's been a few people that I've worked with that you've had on, and
Yeah.
and a few people that I've seen talk and at different events. So it's good to be here.
Amazing. It'd be good to start with, a bit of an introduction about yourself for those who may not know who you are, a bit about who you are, where you're from.
Sure. Well, despite the accent, I was actually born in Scotland.
Yeah,
I was born in Glasgow and did a few years there, but then I started moving around a wee bit. So
yeah,
I did primary school mostly in Dallas, Texas,
fine.
and then back to Glasgow for high school, Strathclyde Uni, and then um, did a year in France as part of that. My degree was computer science and modern languages, which I
Yeah,
don't think is a frequent combination, but
yeah, yeah,
I was certainly the only one doing it in my year. And then out of uni, I went to Newcastle, Newcastle upon Tyne in England, became a Geordie for 10 or 12 years.
yeah.
Got married, one kid came along, second kid came along, and then went looking for babysitters. So found ourselves in Northern Ireland,
Nice.
which is where my wife's from, and that's where I am now. So I'm in Northern Ireland.
Mm,
I've been here for 13 years now. So yeah, it's probably the longest that I've been in any one place
yeah.
for a prolonged stretch. Yeah, and that's kind of where I am now, and I guess yeah, just personal stuff. I do a bit of rugby, and you can sort of tell by the ears or the shoulders or something. But I'm getting a bit too old to play, so
Yeah,
yeah, now I'm sort of managing a team and working on my handicap at golf as well. So
nice,
yeah, it's a
nice.
bit of fun on the side.
Amazing. And with all the travel, what was kind of, obviously as a kid, was that kind of your parents moving around? Was that the reason
Yeah,
why?
so in the 80s it was oil, it
Yeah,
was
fine.
Texas for oil.
Yeah, yeah,
So my parents had been working in the science sector, working for ICI in Greenock near Glasgow, doing sort of chemical analysis, stable isotope analysis, if anybody cares what that is.
mm,
And then one of my dad's friends actually took him over to SMU.
mm.
So if anybody follows golf, that's the university that Bryson DeChambeau went to.
Okay, cool.
There you go. So that was through the 80s, but then
Yeah.
yeah, unfortunately my dad passed away and we moved back home. So
Mm,
yeah, so that was that. And then yeah, the France thing was really cool because I'd
yeah.
actually done a summer in Paris in '96. I was, believe it
Yeah.
or not, working for Disney.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, yeah, so
Cool.
picture me dressed as Mickey Mouse at work.
Yeah.
Was definitely flipping burgers and
Yeah.
cleaning down fast food places and stuff, but did that for and loved it, and then spent a year playing rugby in Montpellier as well. So
Very
that
nice.
that was cool. That was rugby league actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before anybody thinks I'm too famous, Stuart Hogg's was sent Montpellier Rugby Union, so it's definitely not
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, and then yeah, it was really just graduate career stuff.
Mm,
I was looking to get kind of out of Glasgow again, and Procter and Gamble came up, and you know, good company to join, and Newcastle didn't seem too far away, so
yeah.
good
Yeah.
good place to be. So
Yeah. And yeah, kind of shifting to your career background, kind of,
hmm.
you know, can you talk us through kind of, the type of roles you started with and kind of, obviously you're working without systems now, but you
Yeah.
weren't all those years ago. So it'd be good to kind of hear a bit of the background.
Yeah, so from having done predominantly computer science at uni, right? I was never I was never deep into the programming. There was a lot of sort of architecture, a lot of principles, a lot of but what I really enjoyed, I guess, more than the deep programming side of it was the business impact side, right? So how do you use technology to help people, right? And how do you kind of get people to appreciate
Mm.
the impact that you've had with technology? And joining P&G was kind of they looked for smart, curious people with an interest in technology, but they
Yeah,
they assumed that they could train you in
sure.
any specific technology. And
Mm.
I've always had that kind of mentality from there that the technology doesn't matter so much
Mm.
as the use of technology, the application of technology, because these days you know, you can get results from a million different tech
Yeah,
stacks, right?
yeah.
Um, as long as you're focused and you do it well and you do it for the customer and you talk in the customer's language and you take it to them, then that's kind of what I learned at P&G. So I started off doing sort of SAP based stuff.
Sure.
So it was banking initially, configuration on the SAP platform. They were going through a big program of SAP upgrades actually, which
Mm.
is kind of topical right now because there's a huge SAP upgrade
Yeah.
program going on in the world. But this was R2 to R3, and it was putting this sort of Eastern Europe and African country units onto what P&G had created as their sort of standard, the standard global platform. So the solution was mostly pre-built. We had to kind of localize it
Mm.
to some extent, and then migrate data, and then train people, and all that sort of stuff. So it became a progression really through initially just doing the banking part of that to then kind of running the financial side of that to then taking on some more of the logistics world, right? So
Mm.
and I moved from more of an analyst kind of configuration role to project management and then to product management. In the product management world, I then went on to do more warehouse operations and shipping distribution
Yeah.
stuff. So I was product owner for there was an initiative that I was helping out with, which was how do we make our transportation more efficient, right? So
Mm.
you would be giving out discounts to customers for ordering full truckloads of stuff, and all of the floor spaces would be full, but the airspace would be 90% free, right?
Yeah.
So we did a project for 3 or 4 years, which was how do we make our trucks more efficient using technology products. I worked with the SAP and with Ortec and with i2, who became JDA Software,
Yeah.
and that was a lot of fun. But at that point, first kid came along, and
Yeah.
let's say I went from so P&G is very centralized, so I was doing that role globally. So I'd been traveling more and more with P&G. So
Mm.
there was a spell. I've actually got a mug downstairs, which is like Global Traveler Award.
Ah, really cool.
Because in the space of 8 weeks, I think I was in Singapore, then Mexico, then Russia,
Mm.
then Budapest, and then I think I was in Cincinnati for a week as well.
Wow.
Yeah, it was getting nuts, and it was great fun. But I just had the first kid, and it
Yeah,
was like
yeah.
I wasn't seeing. I was coming home, and she was changing all the time, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it was just exciting times. So I sort of pivoted and went into a more of a security operations role, which was based in Newcastle. I had a team in Newcastle that was doing that stuff. It was kind of good to understand a bit more into the security operations world, even if it wasn't the most exciting topic for me. I
Yeah,
wasn't I wasn't creating solutions for customers.
yeah.
But during that period, I was did that for a couple of years. But the second kid came along, and that was
Mm.
the kind of okay. P&G's been fun,
Yeah.
but let's go find some babysitters,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So that was the pivot, and Procter & Gamble's such a great company to learn from. As a foundation for a career, it gave me an appreciation of kind of making good strategic architecture
Mm.
decisions on project management approaches, on risk management approaches. They're so good at all of that stuff. And they've loosened up a little bit, but at the time, that was a purely a promote from within culture. So you would join at kind of entry level manager, and the CEO was hired as a marketing manager or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah.
So you could see that they really invested in training their people. So that was great. But that was 11 years, and that was cool. So, but moving to Northern Ireland now, that was a little bit out there.
Yeah.
So I found a job actually for a company called Andor Technology that were a spin out from Queen's University in Belfast.
Okay.
Um, and they needed an IT manager to kind of pick up and run. So all of a sudden, I've got data centers, I've got people, I've got operations, I've got
Yeah.
and that was a whole different world of challenges,
Yeah.
and I'm dealing with, just basics in terms of security, Active Directory accounts and all that. But then they had their own Sage-based systems on
Yeah.
site. They had a different Sage-based CRM system in place, and yeah, that was kind of cool. But we did a lot of let's say data center upgrades and stuff, and a lot of sort of infrastructure work,
Mm.
telephony, all those things that I never
Mm.
touched before, but sort of learned a lot about the nuts and bolts of operational IT. But also there, what was interesting was they needed some BI type solutions. They needed
Mm.
to have a single pane of glass to look at what was a sale versus an order, what was their fall off rate in between there, what was their production stats looking like, how was the fulfillment. So I put in actually ClickView as a technology product. I
Yeah.
learned that a bit to do it myself, brought some
Yeah.
consultants in to help me out as well, and that was nice. Um, Andor then got kind of acquired, and during that period, I went to CVS. So if you know CVS, they're like Boots in America, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. They're
every
everywhere.
every street
Yeah.
corner, every big red CVS symbol.
Yeah.
And they had a software development side. So in Belfast, a lot of the software market is a lot of the IT jobs are in software.
Mm.
It was a good sort of pivot for me just to get more into the software development process, modern agile processes. What does good look like? Not
Mm.
just from a technology and code point of view, but more from a process people management
Yeah.
point of view. So, code reviews and velocity, just what's important to stay on top of in
Mm.
in software development. Was there for a couple of years and then went independent consulting after that. So, um, yeah, I had a few contacts that helped me get some placements. I was doing
Sure.
things like I was either a business analyst one week, and then I'd do 6 weeks as an application architect, and then I'd
Yeah.
do three
Yeah.
months as project management support. Just whatever kind of tricky problems normally in the early stages of a project, just to put some shape on it
Yeah.
and moving. A lot of that was public sector,
Mm.
which was good, but actually if you know anything about Northern Ireland, then public sector in Northern Ireland tends to go hot and cold as
Okay.
government institutions kind
Yeah.
of start and stop. So I went through a bit of a lull, and I went back to the IT management stuff in a local manufacturing company. So that was just a single site place, and
Mm.
did some interesting stuff for them before the consulting came back around. So yeah, the guys that had done quite a lot of consulting through were called Neueda.
Mm.
Neueda was a small 300 person company in Belfast, and joined them as a solution architect, and I was looking at AWS and Azure, and again a lot of the pre-sale stuff, a lot of the project shaping,
Mm.
estimation, design, team structuring, that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's when I got kind of handed the OutSystems challenge to
Yeah.
like they'd literally just signed a partnership form. And they said, here, if you got some spare time, go and have a look at that. And
Yeah.
we've got some grads over there that you can introduce to it as well,
Yeah.
and see what you can make of it. So yeah, that's kind of where that started.
Yeah, yeah. And what was it, when they kind of told you, this is what we're doing and go have a look. What was your kind of, one, had you even heard of low code prior to that or OutSystems? And two, what was your kind of initial reaction when you kind of had a look at the platform?
Yeah, so geez, it's hard to believe it's 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess initially so I was always open to any technology, right?
Mm.
So anything that gets results, and the first thing you do is you hop in and you watch some videos, and you go,
Mm.
actually, there's some there's some good stuff in here. I was
Mm.
expected there was going to be limits.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I was thinking, right, but actually for public sector work where I'd been doing quite a lot of that is it's an application form, and then there's an administrator, somebody makes
Mm.
a decision and somebody executes it, right? There's not that much demand on the technology, but yet some of the projects that you were seeing were taking 2 years and
Mm.
tens of millions of pounds to go, application form, administrator,
Yeah.
inspection, decision, execution, archive, handle exceptions, right? And then you sort of looked at it and went, this actually looks like it could be useful, right? So I was aware of Power Apps as well, of course, because we were quite heavy into the Microsoft stacks.
Yeah.
So we got some of the grads to, sort of split up and do a bit of a bake off and,
Yeah.
pick a project, do a project, present it back. And everybody came back preferring OutSystems, which was always a good sign. The But yeah, I guess it was sort of lingering at the side, and it was one of those kind of side projects until we got our first customer,
Yeah.
right? And the first customer popped up in Dublin, and it was interesting because they were in the same sort of space of us as kind of exploring the platform.
Mm.
So they bought a pretty small license and we're looking really to make a mock-up of not a mock-up, but a working mock-up of a mobile app.
Mm.
Right? And the company was called OpenNet, and they were a sort of a telecoms kind of infrastructure provider, right? So they would sell their software to O2, EE,
Yeah. Sure.
Vodafone,
Yeah.
all those
Yeah.
people. And it would be like, how do you translate the activity in the network into what do you see in your phone package, right?
Mm.
So minutes, calls,
Yeah.
text, data packages, how do you, and it was just as 5G was kind of coming in. So they were trying
Mm.
to figure out how do you segregate that into, I'll give you free traffic on Spotify, but
Yeah.
not on YouTube,
Yeah. Yeah.
that sort of stuff. So they were trying to make these packages, but they wanted their sales guys to have an app that they could show potential customers to say, yeah, this is just talking to our software,
Yeah.
right? And make it kind of customizable, so change colors on the fly, change
Yeah.
on the fly, change currency on the fly. So that was sort of 6 9 months of what had been a few of our graduates that actually are now running as tech leads in projects on
Yeah.
OutSystems. So,
Wow.
but that was great. But of course, that was also 2020, and
Yeah.
2 months into 2020, everything changed suddenly in the COVID world, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that was probably how it got started, but then how it really took off, I guess, going from two or three grads and me into a full-time thing. We had done a kind of discovery project for the Education Authority in Northern Ireland the year
Mm.
before. Right. So, and the discovery was all around their admission cycle. So every year in Northern Ireland, there's about 25,000 kids, give or take, in each year group. And at three stages, they have to apply for a place in nursery, first of all,
Yeah.
then into primary school, and then
Yeah.
into secondary school. Right.
Yeah.
And it's 25,000 applications that used to all be on paper. And they had a go at digitizing it with one of their internal software suppliers, which was kind of okay
Mm.
but not great, and wasn't great at exceptions. But with COVID coming along, sorry, the reason we had done the discovery work was because they wanted to be better and they wanted to shorten the application life cycle, right? So
Yeah.
we've done all of the kind of business process mapping and we've done all the application architecture, and we put a proposal out which at the time was before OutSystems was part of my life, so it was an Azure
Yeah.
.NET
Yeah.
application, and we'd given them pricing for it and stuff, and it wasn't quite what they wanted. But come September 2020, they suddenly realized that their online application process, which was only live for their preschool and primary, it hadn't gone to secondary schools yet, um, couldn't accept attachments, right? And you need to put in birth certificates and
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
right? So if they didn't change anything, parents were literally having to take paper into the school.
Yeah.
And
Which
of
they can't at the time.
everybody's going, no, that's
Yeah.
not work. So we got kind of a call at the end of September, and we had to be live by the start of January, right?
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and we said like, guys, we know what you want to do, but to integrate it seamlessly and to do it properly, we're gonna have to go without systems,
Yeah.
right? Because we just couldn't see us getting an Azure environment set up and configured and secured properly and everything in that time, as well as getting the process going. And they're like, okay. So on top of this kind of handle the attachments thing that we
Yeah.
started, can you just do the whole application process for the secondary schools that aren't yet live?
Yeah.
And that was for March. And we went, right. Okay, so we did.
Yeah. Yeah.
a lot of blood, sweat, and tears we did. I mean,
Yeah.
we partnered actually. I saw you spoke to Marcelo Ferrero at Near Partner
Yes.
before,
New
so
partner. Yes. Yeah.
actually actually worked with Near Partner on that one to make sure that we were doing things right, because we
Mm.
didn't have that much experience. So yeah, they gave us a tech lead in Diaz and a couple of developers and stuff, and it was really good. But we went live from that first call in September. We kicked off mid-October,
Wow.
right? We had to test it at the start of December, right?
Wow.
And then, January 6th, you had parents attaching their birth certificates for the kids.
Amazing. Yeah. That's cool.
So that became a very strong success story for us.
Yeah.
And yeah, that quickly snowballed. So we went in and we were long-term relationship with the Department of Agriculture, Environment, and Rural Affairs, DAERA, in Northern Ireland, and they had been sort of looking at low-code platforms
Yeah.
and signed up at the end of their financial year when they had some budget left over.
Yeah.
And we built, a bunch of stuff for them, and then Department of Communities, and Department of Economy, and suddenly,
Mm.
actually, where are we now? 5 years later, 4 or 5 years later, um, we reckoned, sort of back of an envelope calculations. We reckoned that about half the population of Northern Ireland each year interacts somehow with an application that we built in OutSystems, right?
Wow. That's really cool.
Which is quite cool. But
Yeah.
as I say, that's now because we're touching like transport applications for schools. Every pupil with special education needs goes through
Mm.
a process of an annual review, which is built on OutSystems. So there's like 75,000 kids just for applications, and there's another 30,000 for transport, another cohort for special education. And then with the community stuff, we were supporting job seekers, right? So
Wow.
and people in financial difficulties, and there were like COVID funds and grants and stuff that
Yeah.
processing forms for. Economy was careers guidance, so everybody leaving school was then
Yeah. Yeah.
a user of the system and stuff. So one way or another, yeah, we really sort of exploded all over the
Yeah.
Northern Irish thing. Yeah, so yeah, that's kind of where it became my full-time job, was from that
Yeah.
EA project. It
Yeah.
was, and I was basically a developer learning on that project as well, and
Yeah.
played a bit of a tech lead role later, and then gradually I spent more of my time on pre-sales and architecture than actually doing
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
development.
And when the graduates kind of obviously had to learn it as well, what did you kind of get any pushback, or were they kind of, all for it, kind of because they had the opportunity to build something in it?
Yeah, do you know it's a combination of uni graduates and kind of career change and stuff as well. I
Okay.
mean,
Yeah.
one of the guys who's now a tech lead with the area, I think he was a car salesman before he joined.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay,
So he's
cool.
the same age as me and been around a
Yeah.
lot. And
Yeah.
yeah, no, but generally speaking, people with the less tech background they had, the more open they were to it. I
Yeah,
think
sure.
because they hadn't heard of it, and it hadn't popped
Yeah.
up at uni, and it hadn't popped up in anything done before. The and I find that, you know graduates especially are just super keen to get on board. They hop on, they do
Yeah.
all the guided paths, they do the training, they explore it, they try different things,
Mm.
and they get results really quickly. Um,
Yeah.
and that's kind of part of the thing I love about OutSystems, is you can just get stuff done, right? And you can
Mm.
make things and they work, and the platform takes care of a lot of the senior stuff, around
Yeah.
hosting and security and secure communications and messaging. And you're building an application, but you're focused on the business logic. You're
Yeah.
not having to worry so much about how it operates.
Mm.
So the grads go really quickly, whereas guys that we've brought in, I find there's a couple of different types of senior developer that have kind of come into it. Ones that are diehard. My career is .NET, right? They're not.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um, and with them, the message is kind of, well, you're not writing COBOL in text editors anymore, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not having to match your brackets manually,
Yeah.
which is what I was doing at uni, right? You've got tools that help you do your
Mm.
coding now, right? This is just another tool, but it's a step change. It's
Mm.
it's not a faster horse, it's a car, right?
Yeah.
And that, when you build your career and your success and your reputation on coding manually, it's quite a shift in mindset. Whereas when you don't have that baggage as a graduate, you're just kind of straight in, and you learn it, and
Yeah.
because it's easy to use, you just pick it up and you run with it, you know. Senior developers, I think, that are more polyglots, that will pick up any technology and play with
Yeah.
it. They're more the ones that are that are more open to it, and
Mm.
they come on board, and they maybe get tied up a little bit in something, and you'll always get a question about branching and merging, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll always get that question. But if they're sort of more curious about different tools and processes and languages, then that open mindset definitely helps get moving. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And something, kind of our system speaks about is, usually someone from traditional background, IT background or experience, traditional coding, if they switch to OutSystems, they can ramp up to be a senior really quick.
Yeah.
Would you say someone like yourself who was that example, did you feel you ramped up pretty fast, to kind of you
Yeah.
know,
I think, yeah, if other experience, um, and especially if you put any application live in the wild on the web, right, on any platform, any technology, but you've had the process of, I've got users, I need to create
mm,
something, it needs to work for them, and now I need to put it live in a secure environment that people can access however they need to access. And you've just dealt with all of those problems of, testing, deployment, release, and all that.
yeah,
That stuff helps you be a senior for
mm,
sure. And that stuff is always, it's process and knowledge based and experience based. Whereas actually building the application is the fastest stuff, right? So that's the let me make something really quick for you.
yeah,
But that's kind of where, if you don't have any other experience, you have to kind of learn that through pushing some OutSystems applications live.
mm,
And actually you learn by having problems. And
yeah,
one of the
yeah,
challenges is that actually you quite often just put things live and they don't have any problems. So you don't really have to scratch the surface and
yeah,
dig into
yeah,
it, right?
yeah,
So that's maybe the challenge for the kind of graduate developer route, is
mm,
how do you build that knowledge of what's actually going on under the hood? Because yeah, as I say, building application out systems is a good chunk of the work, but actually architecting it properly, designing it properly, pushing it to
yeah,
live, migrating data, all of those things are universal challenges for
yeah,
that.
sure, sure. And since you've been using it now for 4 or 5 years, in that time, obviously the platform has evolved every year. There's and
Yeah.
a few times a year there's upgrades, releases. Is there kind of one or two kind of features within the platform that you felt have kind of really been standout features for to help when you're delivering projects, or even
Yeah.
customers appreciate that as well?
Yeah. Honestly, the biggest thing probably isn't new, right? But the thing I think people underestimate hugely is that it's a single platform, right? That you're building everything in one tool
Mm,
set, and you might break it up into different modules and
yeah,
application stuff, but fundamentally in one development environment, you're building your front end, you're building your business logic, you're building your data layer, you're building all your connections, right? It's all there, right? Which means that one person can take a story top to bottom. You're not having a database developer separate to a backend logic developer separate to a hosting and networking person separate to somebody doing front end logic. Everything is in one place. One developer can look at it top to bottom. One click of the debug button, and you can trace it all the way through,
yeah,
right? So it helps for the start, the initial phase. It really helps for the support, continuous development extensions. Especially if you have to pick up something from somebody else. So you've development teams built something, you've got a long-term support team. That handover is so much easier because it's all in one place. It follows in a nice structure. You can just trace it through. I think being a single platform for everything is probably the biggest advantage that people don't actually talk about that much,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um, I guess the other thing is, amongst that, OutSystems focus is purely on the developer, right?
yeah,
So they're a bunch of guys, with five of them in Portugal, and they just want developers' lives to be easier,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
exactly, yeah,
Everything they've done for 20, 25 years, whatever it is now, has been focused on how do I make a developer's life easier. And the developer isn't just building solutions, right? The developer is deploying code and managing data, all of those things. So you've got kind of on one hand all of the investment in the last 5, 6 years, it's been AI, right? So
Yes. Yeah.
OutSystems have been plugging the AI in, whether that's in a kind of what used to be a machine learning type
Yeah.
model of which is now AI Mentor Studio, which is
Yeah.
what are the patterns that represent that code, and kind of checking your work for you as you go. I think that's been brilliant. I think the deployment, the amount of work you can do before you even get into automated DevOps, right?
Mm.
But then they do support the automated DevOps when you grow as well. I think those sorts of things are really underestimated in terms of just getting the developer moving and making the developer's life easy. So yeah, probably the single platform is definitely a big part of it. And then yeah, just that developer focused, AI focused stuff. And yeah, and I think also what I like about OutSystems a lot as well is that they recognize that they're going to run into barriers around what they can build, right?
Yeah.
So they make it easy to extend and integrate stuff, right? And that just gives you the power of everything on the internet, right? Whether
Yeah.
that's plugging customers into Gen AI for
Yeah.
customer facing use of AI,
Mm.
rather than developer use. And those are two very different things. Whether that's plugging into stuff like SAP that we talked earlier, and
Yeah.
big systems like that, the whole Microsoft environment. But that there's 5,000 components on the Forge that
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
let you use the power of every other solution on the internet
Yeah.
to help you out.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously, with everything, there's always going to be things that no platform or technology is perfect. Is
Mm.
there kind of any things that you've experienced while working on projects where currently the platform doesn't offer that you'd like to see in the future?
Yeah, I think so. 2 years ago, I would have said one of the big gaps, when you talk to enterprise architects, right? Enterprise architects love an event-driven architecture, right?
Yeah, yeah, they
They,
do.
they,
Yeah,
they, they they love an event-driven architecture. They love publisher subscriber models that, enterprise
mm,
architects in traditional code love that stuff. And without systems, it was kind of, you could get there,
hmm
but it wasn't easy. That now the new version in ODC of the BPT kind of evolution is much more event-driven. I think
mm,
that's a great move. I think actually speaking of ODC, the container-based deployment for scalability is also a great move, although only the biggest customers are really going to see the benefit of that, right?
yeah, yeah,
But I still think it's a great thing just to again to keep the enterprise architects, the CTO, the CIOs
yeah,
of the world sit to this is a modern platform. It's not just app server, dev server anymore. We're now,
yeah,
we're embracing all the capabilities of AWS under the hood. So those definitely help in terms of what they've done. I think in terms of as a developer, yeah, there's probably a little bit still in there where you feel like your source code's still quite tied in. You're not really getting into being able to branch, and work on something and test it without actually impacting the active version. That's probably something that people would like to see. You can get around it, of course. You
yeah,
can clone your module, make your
yeah,
changes, and then kind of copy them back. But it's a little bit manual. Um, or you can use feature flags or whatever. But that's probably one area that as a developer the experience could maybe improve. But then more commercially, it's OutSystems it's a massive toolbox, but it needs some industry solutions.
yeah,
It needs some starter packs. It needs some stuff that here's my core finance module. Here's my core
yeah,
logistics module. Here's my sales and e-commerce module. They give you kind of a couple of templates and things, but
yeah.
I'd like those solutions to be a bit more starting points for companies to
Sure.
get started and have more industry focus coming from the OutSystems team as
Yeah,
well in terms of their R&D and yeah, I think that's you talk to the Mendix guys as well, and I think that's what they've really got from Siemens is
yeah,
a lot more of that kind of industry focused, particularly
Mm.
manufacturing, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And OutSystems kind of doesn't have a reputation in any industry sector right now.
Mm. Mm.
Uh, so yeah, and I guess the other one is just awareness, right? So
Yeah, 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 of
we
course.
we can talk about OutSystems all the time, but we're kind of talking the bubble, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
How do we get knowledge of OutSystems outside the
yeah,
bubble of OutSystems
yeah.
developers? And, Gartner is useful, but there's only so many times you can point at a magic quadrant, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So yeah, so more broad awareness. I think that's not really platform, but
Yeah,
it's more company marketing awareness. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, sure. No, that's interesting. I mean, yeah, you touched on kind of, AI and, that's the kind of everyone's talking about it. What's your kind of, personal view on, Gen AI and, what the future kind of may look like?
Yeah, it's one we so um version one was my previous company. I'm now at Bridgeall. But version one would have talked and I still do talk a lot about AI and AI. For me, I break AI down into okay, AI for people using it and AI for developers, right?
Yeah,
Um, and I think what OutSystems is doing with AI for developers is brilliant, right?
mm,
In that the danger of traditional text-based code with Copilot or other AI solutions are out there, right?
yeah,
Is that you get code back from a machine and you have to know your code before you can scan it and
yeah,
figure out is it good code, right?
yeah, yeah,
And then, or you get another bot checking your bot's work, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, and then another bot,
yeah,
you can have bot inception, and at the end
yeah,
of the day, how do you know what if your code is good, right? And
mm,
I worry that with those models, it gets harder and harder for juniors can create very good code with it very quickly,
yeah,
as long as you trust the model, right? But if there's a breakdown in trust in the model, I have no idea how they would figure it out, right? Whereas with the OutSystems Project Morpheus, that
yeah,
we probably talked about on the pod a
yeah,
few times,
we
right?
have, yeah,
But I love that it creates a model for you in the same development environment. You can then make changes to it, and then you can hand back to the. I think that two-way interaction with the AI thing is genuinely the future of how AI assisted development should work. It should be a two-way thing. It should be let me connect and extend. It should be transparent. And I think having those kind of visual representation, be it screens or flowcharts
yeah,
or data models, right? The visual representation in OutSystems makes it so much easier to scan through and understand what the AI tool has come up with, right?
sure,
That I think that's a genuine winner in terms of that AI assisted development process, right? And I'm excited to see how that evolves. On the other side, I think for consumers of AI, we're seeing already that with the Microsoft stack that AI is getting embedded in people's day-to-day
yeah,
operations and people's day-to-day work. And I think that's great. And without systems, we can create access to that and the AI model builder or whatever
agent
the
builder,
agent
agent
builder.
builder,
That's
yeah,
the word I'm looking for.
yeah,
I think that's a great tool to help out. We can help put that in front of people, and the more we can embed that sense of an assistant looking over your shoulder, watching you,
yeah,
helping you out, giving you a nudge, giving you a prompt if you need a block of text, or summarizing a block of text if you get an input. Um, and even we've seen it for years where machine learning algorithms can pick up and make a decision based on say a 95% threshold match
yeah,
or whatever. Those things have existed for a while, and I think this AI current evolution is putting more of that in the hands of more people, right? Which is obviously good, but for me it's about how do you just make sure that that's an assistant and that the
yeah,
person still has value to add to their process. Otherwise, we would
mm,
just automate it and take them out of it
yeah,
completely.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but it should be, and it generally is a very, very, very useful tool for consumers as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of kind of, customers, and you're someone who's obviously worked on multiple projects. How do you think, OutSystems and low code as a whole has kind of changed the landscape for customers out there?
I think it's hard to answer because the the challenge without systems, right,
Mm,
is that it's a big strategic decision,
yeah,
right? And for those customers that make a big strategic decision, I think the benefits they get are huge. Just the speed, and speed drives cost. But the amount of work they can do, the consistency that they can have, the quality that they can have, and actually the reduced cost of support and change in the full life cycle of software is significantly better in OutSystems than other technologies. Now, in the low code space, there's a lot of there's 150, 200 different tools out
Yeah.
there now, right?
Yeah.
So and OutSystems and Mendix at the top of the charts.
Yeah.
Power Apps has a lot of market share. It's a
Mm.
bit of a freemium model
Yeah.
with how it goes at it. I find Bridgeall sell Power Platform work as well. And I
Mm.
find it's great for sort of call it departmental work, right? So
Sure.
1 to 10 people using the same
Mm.
solution. It's pretty good if it sits on top of SharePoint, or actually if it sits on top of Dynamics, it's really good as well.
Yeah.
Um, but to build a complete ecosystem of a
Mm.
large scale project, it falls short. And even stuff like Power Pages isn't great as a front end tool yet.
Mm.
And I know Microsoft will get there, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now it's a bit of a hub for JavaScript, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which means you can get stuff done, right?
Mm.
But OutSystems for me it sits out there, um, and that I think is the challenge for us as kind of evangelists, is how do you get people to consider their architecture and their platforms
Yeah.
early on in their digital transformation journeys, right? Because
Mm.
everybody's on a digital
Yeah.
transformation,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
everybody's doing it. But if you just go project by project, it's very hard to justify a platform-based
Yeah.
license.
Yeah.
If you actually step back and say, what do we need to do? Well, we need to build a load of application forms and
Mm.
internal processes and whatever, and they all look a bit like this, then actually suddenly that's where the local platform should step up and say, let me just
Yeah.
take care of that for you,
Yeah.
right? And then you can spend more of your time working on, okay, what are my tricky bits of logic? What do I want to automate? How do I trust the automation? All those hard questions, which should be where you spend your time,
Yeah. Yeah.
rather than let me create a form and let me
Yeah.
do the output of your form, and let me give you some reports on your throughput, right? Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can do that
Yeah.
really quickly. So yeah, I think that's the hard part. If you invest in a strategic platform and strategic thinking about what you need from your platform up front, you can get huge benefits from OutSystems, but it's hard to get people to look at that level early enough in a project to make a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And you spoke about obviously awareness, earlier, kind of, of I think it's not just OutSystems, it's low code in a whole, and obviously that's one of the reasons of this podcast,
Yeah.
but also there's a lot of skeptics out there who kind of still, mainly traditional, but some, just kind of have heard of low code. What's
Yeah.
your kind of, message to, those people who kind of, still kind of don't
Yeah.
agree that, low code's
So there are a lot of people, and if we look at the consulting industry, right?
yeah,
The consulting industry is tens of billions of dollars a year
yeah,
on traditional code, right? There's a lot of vested interest in not disrupting that, right?
yeah,
And there's a lot of people, and it's not just the developers, it's the sales, it's the strategy, it's the consulting leads, it's the architects, right? Everybody has got to this point in their careers. They're having a fairly stable landscape of tools for the
yeah,
last 25 years, right? Um, and that's okay. But as I said before, you know we're not just making horses go faster here, right? Or
yeah, yeah,
you know, as part of any sensible architecture, you're looking at it as a 5-year window. That window might be getting shorter and shorter, but the tools across the low code landscape are only getting better, right? Are only getting more accessible for people, and it's all I find it's almost like the first time that you picked up a really automated IDE as a developer, right? And it started, inserting snippets of code for you, or it started checking your brackets or your syntax or your parameters, or, suddenly you started getting assistance from Visual Studio, or for,
mm,
Eclipse, or whatever your idea of choice was.
yeah,
It was hard to get your head around that if you'd been used to working in text-based stuff, right? And you're going, oh, this is so much easier, right? Now, okay, we're changing from text to visual,
Yeah.
but it's still the important thing is still all of that experience of what does a good application look like, right?
Yeah.
Of what is a sensible business architecture, business process, what is a sensible technical architecture, right? And then it's just executing faster with a better tool, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of my message to the skeptics is, we're still creating software here. We're just doing it a bit faster,
Yeah.
right? And to do that, we're changing the paradigm that you develop with. But that ability to break down a problem into logical steps, execute it properly, think about security, think about defensive programming, think about where people could go wrong, thinking about even just testing and data migration and all those things, right? They're still important. It's just a better tool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of how I try to simplify it. It's just try it. It's a better tool.
Yeah.
Um, it's like going from a screwdriver to a power drill, right? It does the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I say to people to try and get them to try it, and
Yeah.
there is an element of it can't be that easy as
Mm.
well, right? Or there must be limits to it is
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
the
I
word
think
used.
that's a common one. Yeah.
What are the limits? I'm like, well, I'm not making Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna draw the line at games.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Uh, but honestly, most businesses, and this is kind of a message almost to the consulting industry, right? But you look at the consulting industry that I'm part of, right?
Mm.
And if you boil it down, most company processes are screen of information, make a change, maybe
Yeah.
send it for review, maybe send it on to the next person, right? It's just screens, workflows, triggers, right? And it's all there, but it's not rocket science. It's not, the bits you want to focus on are where's the competitive advantage, where's the differentiator for you, your company, the way that you execute better than somebody else. And that might be a hand-coded algorithm like
Yeah.
the secret recipe of Coke or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, keep that there, but do everything else in a low-code platform. Get it, easier to build, easier to support, easier to run, and that's where the real benefit comes from, right? You get better solutions faster.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. And yeah, just kind of just to finish off on the final kind of note, what's kind of obviously you've just started at Bridgeall as well. So what's your kind of, personal kind of goals and aspirations that you're looking forward to in the future?
Yeah, I confess part of joining Bridgeall was I know the Scottish government are getting bigger on OutSystems, right? Social
Yeah,
Security Scotland are in particular are huge customers now, and there's more departments looking at that. So coming from Scotland, I was keen to get involved in some of that, right? So
yeah,
I'd love to see the Scottish OutSystems community grow,
yeah,
right? There are pockets of people, and I've seen you've had some of them on the podcast here,
yeah,
right? Um, but yeah, I think there's a real opportunity there, and partially that depends how the elections go and stuff as well.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I think for Bridgeall, it's how do we get involved more in that? How do we actually bring a community together outside of just being customer and supplier transactions,
yeah,
but actually some relationships in there as well. Um, and yeah, that's part of the kind of OutSystems UK and Ireland infrastructure as well.
mm,
So at Neueda then version one, that was very much a sort of an Irish focused
mm,
market with an attempt to expand into the rest of the UK.
yeah,
Um, with Bridgeall, it's more Scotland. So, that those partnerships all need to be different parts of the ecosystem within UK and Ireland. And, it is quite a healthy partner landscape, but I'd like to see it grow and have more kind of people talking about OutSystems
yeah,
locally, not just a couple of people talking about it and then offshoring
yeah,
it to Portugal
yeah, yeah,
or,
yeah,
or actually Holland or India or wherever,
yeah,
but I'd
mm,
like more onshore sort of presence as well. Yeah, and I guess for me personally, it's I am at my best when I talk to customers about their problems and help solve their problems with technology. So how can I get to a position where I'm talking to more customers and helping them solve more problems with the technology? And I happen to think OutSystems is a really good one to pick up and use. So
amazing,
that's
amazing. And I'm guessing obviously you're not looking to relocate anytime soon, for now.
Well, we're at the stage with wives and kids where we're kind of getting into GCSE years and things,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
it's probably got a few years left of the school scenario we might be looking at some stage, but certainly there's more appealing parts of the world for weather, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. It was really good to chat to you and kind of,
no problem.
hear your insights and your views on things. And I'm sure we'll meet again in person sometime in the near future.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure. Good to talk to you.
Amazing. Thanks, Andy.
All right, thanks, bro.
Take care. Thank you for listening to today's episode, which is brought to you by iTrack. We are a leading staffing firm that solely specializes in supplying both contract and permanent low-code professionals to organizations globally. Navigating the niche landscape of the low-code market requires the best talent, and we recognize its critical importance for our clients. Whether you're a company looking to strengthen your team, an individual seeking the next career move, or someone entirely new to the world of low-code, we're here for you. Our extensive experience and in-depth market knowledge enables us to quickly pinpoint the ideal candidates while offering expert advice and support at every stage of your low-code journey. Reach out to us through our website or connect with me directly on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to assist you. Thank you once again for joining us today. We'll be back next week with another insightful episode. Until then, take care.